Yu was an ordinary boy with no special talents. Somehow, he ended up being accepted into a prestigious academy known for its elite and gifted students. From the very first day, life wasn't easy. His classmates mocked him for being talentless, and he quickly became the target of bullying. But things took an unexpected turn when he was invited to live in a mansion with three of the school's most talented and most admired girls. Each of them was beautiful, skilled, and far out of Yu's league in every way. Seika Academy was a famous school for talented students. It trained future stars in acting, sports, and advanced studies. Many of the most successful people in the world had graduated from there. One of them was Subaru Ayase, a legendary actress and top student. Now her son, Yu Ayase, had just transferred into the school, but Yu was not like his mother. While she had been admired by everyone, Yu was struggling to keep up. His mentor at the school treated him harshly, constantly yelling at him. It wasn't because of anything Yu did, it was just because of who he was. Everyone expected him to be like Subaru, while he wasn't. He failed many of his classes and was weak in martial arts. Even so, some students still believed that he might have hidden talent. After all, some geniuses take time to show their abilities. Subaru Ayase, Yu's mother, had been a perfect student. She was beautiful, smart, and brave, and she could do all her own performance stunts. She had graduated at the top of her class and was admired worldwide. Because of her reputation, people watched Yu closely and judged everything he did. One day, Yu's mentor told him that the top three students, called the Three Royals, were curious about him. These three were the best in their fields. Wanting to prove himself, Yu gathered all his strength and threw a punch. But it was weak and barely touched his opponent. His mentor lost patience and slammed Yu to the ground. Everyone watching began to whisper that Yu, the son of Subaru Ayase, was a complete failure. Yu had heard this kind of talk many times since he turned 17. Lying on the floor, he looked up at his mentor and said something sharp about how average people often cared too much about talent. The mentor was briefly surprised. "You look just like Subaru," and even sounded like her for a moment. Still, the scolding continued. Yu said nothing more. He already knew how talented his mother was. He had seen it himself. Without replying, he walked away. Most people thought he had simply accepted defeat, but suddenly, the mentor was kicked from behind. It was Miko, the top martial artist in the school. Her two sisters, Kazuki and Miwa, stood beside her. Kazuki was a famous actress and Miwa was a sports genius. The three of them were the highest-ranked students in their programs. Yu looked up in surprise. The sisters were disappointed when they learned that he had failed his tests and had no special skills. They had hoped he would join their departments, but Yu had already moved into the general education course, a forgotten division of the school for students without any special talents. As he turned to leave, Nico reminded him of the rule that the loser had to clean the dojo, so he stayed behind to clean. The sisters walked away, tossing insults his way, but Yu didn't respond. He simply picked up a bucket and started working. The next day, the dojo was spotless. Students were shocked by how clean it was. No one knew Yu had cleaned everything by himself late into the night. As Yu walked home, he thought about his past. When he was a kid, he had wanted to be praised like his mother. He would act out movie scenes in front of the television. But every time he saw his mother perform, he realized he could never shine like her. He tried many different things, acting, sports, and studying, but never found something he was good at. Eventually, he gave up and grew distant from her, even though she was the only family he had. Later, his mother became sick and had to stay in the hospital. She often watched an old family drama series she had acted in. In it, she played a kind and simple mother. It wasn't one of her popular roles, but she liked it. So did Yu. One day, while sitting beside her bed, he told her that his favorite part of the show was the ending, where the whole family would gather around the table for dinner. That moment led to one of the only deep conversations they had in years. From that talk, Yu realized something important. His mother didn't care if he became famous. She only wanted him to have a happy family. That was her final wish. After she passed away, Yu packed his things and went to live at the home of Mr. Mikadano, a man who had been a friend and supporter of his mother. When Yu arrived, he stood in front of a large mansion with the Mikadano name at the gate. The house was huge, but he remembered that Mr. Mikadano had invited him, so he went inside. As soon as he entered, a foot hit him in the face. He fell to the floor. Miko, wearing only a towel, had mistaken him for a trespasser. She tried to kick him again but slipped. Yu, trying to help, threw a towel over her head to dry her off. She pulled away angrily. Just then, Kazuki and Miwa appeared. Miwa recognized Yu right away and demanded to know why he was there. Before he could answer, his phone rang. It was Mr. Mikadano, calling to check if Yu had arrived safely. His sisters stood in shock when Yu spoke casually to their father. Mr. Mikadano explained that he had promised Subaru to look after Yu. He wanted to support the boy and keep his mother's memory alive. What he forgot to mention was that Yu would be living with his daughters. Now Yu realized he was going to live in the same house as the three royals. The girls were not happy. Nico accepted it only because it was their father's decision. Kazuki couldn't believe their father had invited someone she considered a failure. Mayo refused to help take care of him at all. But Yu didn't give up. He introduced himself politely and said he would do his best to get along. While unpacking, he accidentally stepped on a woman's undergarment. Kazuki grabbed it from him, blushing. Then Yu noticed how messy the house was. The kitchen was full of dirty dishes. The sink had broken glass. The laundry was piled up. Kazuki had tried to wash the dishes but failed. Maiwa had forgotten how to do laundry and wrote instructions on her hands. Nico blamed Yu for exposing their mess, though she was in charge of cleaning. He didn't say anything. He just started cleaning again. In no time, the mansion looked clean and organized. That's when Nico realized Yu had also cleaned the dojo. Yu smiled and said he didn't mind cleaning. It was something he could actually do well. The next morning, Yu woke up early, hoping for a calm day since there was no school. But the house was already full of noise. Meko was training loudly in her dojo. Meiwa was playing a video game and arguing with someone online. Kazuki was in the kitchen mixing a strange green drink. Yu sat at the table, hoping they might eat together. But Kazuki rushed out. Miwa counted her snacks as her breakfast. When Yu warned her about it, she ignored him. While he made breakfast for himself, he thought about how his mother had acted the same way. She had always been busy, skipping meals and focusing only on her work. Now he understood the sisters more. Kazuki needed to stay in shape to act. Miwa kept her mind sharp with snacks. Nico had to follow strict routines for her training. Talented people often got so focused on themselves that they didn't notice others. Yu remembered how even his mother made him feel like he didn't belong in her world. Before the girls left the house, Yu stopped them and told them they had forgotten something. They checked their bags in a panic, but found nothing missing. Then he calmly reminded them that they forgot to wish each other a nice day. The sisters didn't know how to respond. They brushed off his words as strange, but later, each of them remembered what he had said. Back in the kitchen, Yu was washing dishes when Mr. Mikadano called again. He explained that he would be away most of the time because of work. Yu would be spending his days alone with the sisters. Mr. Mikadano asked Yu for a favor to be there for the girls when they faced problems. He believed that Yu, even without special talent, could help them open up. Yu looked around the now-clean house. He didn't know how he could help 3 gifted girls as someone so average. But he remembered his mother's wish. He had promised to try. He wasn't talented. He wasn't special. But he would do his best. He would try to build the happy family his mother had always dreamed of. Even though it was a difficult task, Yu tried not to let Mr. Mikadano's requests overwhelm him. He couldn't help but wonder how someone like him, so ordinary, could possibly help 3 incredibly talented girls. Why would they even need help from someone like him? But Mr. Mikadano had explained everything. Kazuki had an important audition coming up, Nico was training for a national martial arts competition, and Miwa had a big Shaja title match on the horizon. He wanted Yu to support them through it all. After the call ended, Yu was outside hanging the laundry. The thoughts still lingered in his mind. He wasn't strong, smart, or special. He'd always struggled to find something he was good at. He understood failure very well. As the son of a famous actress with no talent of his own, he felt the sting of other people's disappointment more times than he could count. If that pain was already hard for someone average like him, he couldn't imagine how much worse it must be for someone everyone expected to succeed. Determined to help in any way he could, Yu hopped on his bicycle and headed to the market. He figured the first step to getting closer to them was to share a meal together. Later that evening, Nico came home and was surprised to see Yu in the kitchen. She had almost forgotten that he lived there now. Yu was in the middle of cooking and invited her to try the food. Thinking he was just trying to win her over, Nico turned him down and said she had already bought dinner for herself. She went to shower and dry her hair, but when she came back, she was surprised to see Yu still cooking, surrounded by a pile of cookbooks. He looked so focused. It made her realize he was really serious about making this meal. Miwa came home around the same time. Yu cheerfully told her he was making a family dinner. Nico still thought it was silly, and that Yu was just trying to get attention. But watching him reminded her of something from the past. Even when top chefs made their meals, the sisters often refused to eat them. Nico especially was strict about what she ate, always sticking to carefully planned meals for training. That night, Nico sat alone in her room, eating her pre-packed dinner. But her thoughts kept drifting back to Yu's cooking. Curious, she peeked downstairs. Seeing no one around, she quietly walked to the table. When she saw the meal he made, she was shocked. It was perfectly balanced for an athlete's diet. Just then, Yu appeared behind her and explained all the nutrients in the meal. He had even talked to a dietitian to make sure it fit her needs. Nico was amazed, but she tried not to show it. Still, she sat down to give it a try. When she didn't complain, Yu's face lit up with joy. Maiwa peeked down from the stairs. She saw her sister eating and couldn't help but feel curious too. She quietly came down and you offered her a plate designed specifically for her brain health. He happily listed out the ingredients and their benefits. Miko was surprised again. You had made a different meal for each of them. Meiwa tried to act like she didn't care, but Yu was persistent. Finally, the two sisters sat at the table, teasing each other like normal siblings. Seeing this made Yu smile, but the happy moment didn't last long. Kazuki walked in. Yu proudly presented a meal made just for her, full of nutrients to keep her looking her best for her career. But Kazuki didn't even look at the food. She turned and walked straight to her room. Deep down, seeing her sisters eating together like a real family warmed her heart, but she didn't feel like she belonged at that table. Not with food made by someone she saw as a nobody. Yu was frozen in place. His mood dropped instantly. Even Nico and Meiwa were annoyed by Kazuki's reaction. Nico offered to eat her sister's meal, but Yu stopped her, warning it could mess up her diet. He promised to take care of all their meals from now on. 3 days passed, and Yu still made no progress with Kazuki. In class, he couldn't stop thinking about her. He wondered how he could understand her better. Then an idea struck him. He stood up and left class, determined to do something. He found Kazuki surrounded by students, all admiring her beauty. Without thinking, he called out to her. Everyone stared. Kazuki warned him not to come closer. He tried to joke about all the effort he put into making her dinner, but Kazuki snapped at him, embarrassed by all the attention. Students began whispering that the two of them might be dating. Yu panicked and ran off. He decided to ask Miko for help. At the dojo, she was busy with training, and her annoyed face made it clear she didn't want to be bothered. Two teammates stepped forward, thinking Yu was causing trouble. Realizing he was in danger, Yu quickly ran away. Next, he turned to Miwa. He found her in class, casually playing on her phone. The other students were talking about how hard the homework was, and Miwa casually gave the right answer, surprising everyone. Yu was surprised to see her sitting alone. He asked her to eat lunch with him, but Miwa refused and walked off. Yu followed her, no matter where she went. They ended up running around the school in circles. Strangely, they ran at the same pace, proving Miwa wasn't much of an athlete either. Eventually, they both collapsed in exhaustion. Miwa admitted sports weren't her strength, but said she was still better than Yu. They joked about being different from everyone else. Yu called himself a royal too, of being short, weak, and stupid. Miwa laughed and said his good looks were misleading. Later, while eating sandwiches together, Yu opened up about his struggles with Kazuki. Miwa remembered something from childhood. Kazuki once asked their mother to cook just for her. She looked so happy. Maybe that memory held the key. When Kazuki came home, Yu announced what he planned to cook next. Kazuki's eyes widened and she suddenly collapsed. Her sisters rushed over. She said she was just tired, but her forehead was burning with fever. Yu brought porridge to her room, but Kazuki shut him out. Her sisters explained that she often got sick and that rehearsals had been tough lately. For the next few days, Yu continued delivering meals to her room, but she returned them untouched with a note saying, "Take that away." Finally, Yu reached his breaking point, but as he turned to leave, Kazuki collapsed again, falling right into his arms. Still, he didn't give up. He offered to bring her supplements and even help her rehearse so she wouldn't fall behind. He remembered he had acted once too, though only because his mother pulled strings to get him in. He tried reading the script and acting alongside her, but his performance was awful and Kazuki kicked him out. The next day, he tried again. Still bad. He kept trying, reading the script over and over, but nothing worked. That night, Kazuki laid in her bed, thinking that someone like Yu, who was amateur, could never really understand what it meant to be a professional. She had always been admired and given the main roles. That meant there was always pressure on her to do well. Failing was never an option. Wanting to improve herself, Kazuki finally got up. When she walked into the living room, she saw Yu watching a movie on TV. It was the same story she was practicing for. She realized that even after his long days at school and doing chores, Yu was spending his nights studying the movie just to help her practice. The next morning, Yu's acting was still awkward and stiff. But this time, Kazuki didn't tell him to stop. He had clearly worked hard. Then something surprising happened. After Kazuki said her line, Yu replied with so much feeling that the scene actually turned out well. He was so moved that he started crying. After failing many times, he had finally done something right. Kazuki thought it was silly to cry over one good scene, so she scolded him a little to calm him down. Still, deep inside, she quietly wished she could return to acting soon. Later, Kazuki spoke up. She said she was ready to try Yu's cooking, but only if he agreed to one condition. She was shy about it at first and pulled a blanket over her face. Then, in a soft voice, she listed the foods she didn't like. After all this time, she still didn't want anyone to know how picky she was about food. That morning, Meiwa and Miko couldn't believe what they were seeing. Kazuki was eating breakfast with them, and not just snacks, but real food. Yu passed by and casually praised her for finishing her soup. Kazuki simply said it was fine as long as there were no carrots. Little did she know you had secretly grated some into the soup. As he quietly ate his own meal, you felt relieved. It had taken effort to bring all three sisters together at the table. They were difficult to manage, but for a moment, it felt worth it. However, by evening, his joy faded. One after another, the sisters sent messages saying they wouldn't be home for dinner. You tried not to show his disappointment, but his voice gave it away. Just when he thought they were becoming like a family, things were falling apart again. He remembered how he used to be left alone often. His mother, a genius actress, would be gone for months because of her work. Even though he admired her, that distance had created a gap between them. Now seeing the Mikado sisters, each a prodigy in their own way, he couldn't help but compare them to his mother. He often felt like he didn't belong next to such talented people. Still, Mr. Mikado had asked him to take care of them, and you wanted to do that properly. The problem was, you didn't really know what a happy family was supposed to look like. Looking for answers, you thought about his favorite movie, a film series where his mom played a loving mother. It wasn't full of drama, just warm moments and small smiles. That's the kind of family he wanted. So he rewatched all the movies one after another until he reached the wedding scene where his mother in a beautiful dress married the lead actor. Watching it moved him, but also reminded him how different real life was from movies. By then, the sisters had returned home. When they entered the living room, they found you watching the movie with teary eyes. Curious, Maiwa peeked at the screen and was shocked to realize he had binged the entire series. Kazuki recognized the actress, Subaru, Yu's mother. She figured he must really miss her. Taking a deep breath, Kazuki gently told Yu he didn't have to do all the chores or cook just to be accepted. Maiwa agreed, telling him to take it easy. Nico, however, bluntly called him a freeloader. He was hurt and stood up, saying he didn't see himself that way. Even though he had problems with his mother, he now understood her better and wanted to do things right this time. He wanted to connect with them and build a real family. But the sisters didn't seem to get it. Nico scoffed, saying family didn't mean much, especially for people like them. She questioned how someone like you could ever be family to them. Just then, the wedding scene played on the screen again. The actor spoke a heartfelt vow to Subaru about building a family together. The sisters froze. Instead of understanding his true feelings, they misunderstood, thinking you wanted to marry them all. Clueless, you kept talking and asked Nico when her birthday was. He said since they were in the same grade, he wanted to know who was older so they could decide who the big sibling was. The girls turned red with frustration and, without letting him finish, called him a freeloader again and stormed off. That night, while soaking in the bath, Nico found herself thinking about you. She was bothered by how calm he always was even while living with 3 girls. Suddenly, a loud scream came from the kitchen. You could have forgotten to buy bread and was panicking. When he turned around and saw Nico wearing only a towel, his concern shifted. He calmly warned her that she might catch a cold. Embarrassed, Nico ran off, nearly bumping into Miwa, who noticed her red face. Miwa asked what was wrong, but Nico claimed it was just the heat from the bath. Still, Miwa was suspicious. Nico had never reacted this way before, even when you accidentally saw her with a towel. Miwa squinted at her, and Miko quickly denied everything. Just then, you walked in carrying freshly folded laundry and handed it to Miwa. Their hands touched, and Miwa's face turned pink. She quickly pulled her hand back. Seeing this, Nico grew even more suspicious. When Nico kept asking her back, Miwa realized what it meant. She thought Nico had a crush on you too. The two started bickering and denying everything. Meanwhile, you remained completely unaware, calmly picking up the scattered clothes and folding them again. Kazuki soon stepped in and scolded her sisters. You politely asked her to place a pot on the top shelf, which she couldn't reach. Kazuki was in a good mood and helped, but when you thanked her with a bright smile, her face turned red. She turned away, hoping he didn't notice. Maiwa and Nico, however, caught her reaction right away and began teasing her. You, still not understanding, asked them to stop fighting, thinking it was just their usual argument. As the girls left the room, you noticed the mess and started cleaning. While wiping the table, he found an old photo of the sisters when they were young, smiling and hugging each other. They looked so happy back then, so different from how distant they were now. He asked who left the photo out, but none of them admitted it. He didn't believe them. Someone still treasured that memory, and you wanted to help bring that warmth back. The next day, the sisters told him they would each be away for the weekend due to their own competitions and activities. At school, you couldn't focus. The idea of them growing further apart made him uneasy, so he secretly checked their destinations and had an idea. That night, he bought and gave each of them their hotel and flight tickets, saying he wanted to make things easier. Meiwa muttered that the hotel food might not be great, and you noticed she seemed like she might miss his cooking, but she denied it. He smiled and promised to cook something nice when they returned. Later, Meiwa finished her first shogi match with a win, but her mentor warned that her next opponent would be tougher. While heading to her hotel, she passed under cherry blossoms and saw a nearby festival, reminding her of old memories. When she reached the hotel, she was surprised to see Kazuki checking in too. Kazuki said her performance theater was nearby. Moments later, Nico also arrived. Her event was close as well. The three sisters were confused until Yu showed up, smiling. He admitted he arranged it so they'd be near each other, hoping it would help them bond again. At first, the sisters thought it was silly, but Yu explained that the Cherry Blossom Mag Festival was tonight, and they were already here. He even added that the shrine they were set to bring luck to competitors. Miko laughed it off, saying geniuses didn't need prayers. In response, Yu showed them a booklet filled with names of famous prodigies who had visited the shrine. The sisters were surprised. Then Yu pulled out a festival guide with pictures of food stalls. That caught Meiwa and Miko's attention. Kazuki agreed to go to the festival, saying it would be great for social media. Yu then said he had already found the best places to rent kimonos. They headed to a shop, and the staff, seeing the sisters, were excited to help. Kazuki chose a classy black and white kimono that fit her elegant image. Meiwa picked a green one with cute kitten prints. Yu smiled as he took their photos. Nico, however, stayed quietly in the corner, saying she didn't like kimonos. Yu spoke to her gently, reminding her there were many different styles to choose from. The staff, noticing her hesitation, suggested a denim-style kimono that matched her cool and confident vibe. But Yu handed her a soft pink kimono adorned with cherry blossoms instead. Her sisters were unsure. It didn't seem like something Nico would wear, but Yu believed it would suit her perfectly. Now it was up to Nico to decide. Time passed, and the others began to wonder what was taking so long. Finally, the door slid open. Nico stepped out wearing the pink kimono, her hair neatly styled. She looked stunning. For a moment, everyone stood in silence, too surprised to speak. Feeling self-conscious, Nico mumbled that she probably looked weird. But their wide eyes and speechless expressions told a different story. They were all in awe of how beautiful she looked. That night, Yu wandered through the lively festival with the three Mikadona sisters. He had hoped they could enjoy it together like a happy family. But to his surprise, Kazuki quickly became the center of attention. Fans surrounded her, asking for photos and cheering her on like she was on stage. She handled the crowd gracefully, and Yu hesitated to interrupt. Still, even while smiling for pictures, Kazuki kept an eye on her sisters. She noticed Miwa and Nico happily trying out food from the festival stalls. Nearby, one girl stood apart from the crowd. She admitted Kazuki was beautiful, but insisted she was still just a girl like anyone else. She turned to walk away, but suddenly the strap of her slipper broke and she tripped. Just before she hit the ground, Kazuki reached out and caught her. The crowd gasped, then cheered. Without paying much attention to the noise, Kazuki helped the girl to a safer spot. Yu, watching from a distance, followed them through the crowd. When Kazuki made sure the girl was okay and turned to leave, Yu quietly pulled her aside behind some bushes. At first, Kazuki looked annoyed. But before she could scold him, Yu handed her a bag of food and a small bandage. He had noticed she was walking with a slight limp and guessed her sandal strap had hurt her foot. Though Kazuki tried to brush it off, Yu insisted. When she finally showed him her foot, the injury was worse than expected. She had still carried someone with that wound. Yu asked why she hadn't said anything. Kazuki replied that as someone seen as a prince to others, asking for help would disappoint everyone's expectations. But Yu said that didn't matter. Everyone should be allowed to be themselves. He carefully helped her put on the bandage, and Kazuki felt a soft blush rise to her cheeks. Meanwhile, Menwa and Nico were trying out a goldfish scooping game. Miko was frustrated. Every scoop tore. Miwa laughed, which only made her more annoyed. Just in time, Kazuki returned wearing a mask to avoid being recognized, with Yu right behind her. They split into teams, Kazuki and Yu versus Miwa and Miko. Maiwa teased Kazuki that the mask looked better than her usual serious face. As they played, Maiwa caught fish easily while Miko kept losing. Kazuki accused Miwa of cheating, but Maiwa proudly said they just lacked skill. Yu, watching the friendly bickering, sighed at how seriously they were taking a kid's game. Soon after, Yu quietly slipped away. His plan was simple: keep the sisters time together. But he had a mission too. He ran across the festival grounds, heading straight for the Lotus Hopping Challenge, a special event. To win, contestants had to cross a pond by jumping on lotus-shaped platforms and reach Victoria Gate at the end. The prize, a photo with the shrine's golden guardian, said to bring great luck, especially for people with upcoming competitions. Yu clutched a photo of the sisters from childhood, taken at the same shrine. He wanted to recreate that memory, to help them feel close again. But the challenge was harder than expected. Some lotus pads were unstable and would sink. Contestants fell one after another. The crowd said it was impossible. No one had finished it in 10 years. One host remembered, however, that 3 young sisters had done it long ago. Yu stepped up. On his first try, he immediately fell into the water. He tried again and again, failing each time. Most people gave up, but not Yu. He kept begging for more chances. As the sky darkened and rain began to fall, the host begged him to stop, but Yu stayed focused. He imagined how the sisters might have worked together, balancing each other's weaknesses. Using that image in his mind, he made one final run and jumped. This time, he landed on solid ground in front of the gate. The crowd cheered and the host raised a camera to take his prize photo, but you refused. Instead, he ran back toward where he left the sisters. The rain poured harder and festival staff announced early closure. You stopped in the empty street, soaked and alone. Maybe they'd gone home already. Maybe he had pushed them too hard. Just as he lay down, disappointed, he opened his eyes to find the three sisters standing there. Earlier at the festival, the girls had worried about how to find Yu since they didn't have his number. Meiwa joked about posting a missing person alert on Kazuki's fan page. But when they tried to describe him, they couldn't agree. Kazuki said his smile was his best trait. She had seen it up close. Meiwa claimed she knew everything about him, especially his cooking. Nico said you always bought her protein and sports tape when she needed it. All three turned red, realizing how personal their comments sounded. In the end, they gave up on social media and decided to find him themselves. Back at the present, each of them is holding an umbrella. He thought they'd left him, but it was the opposite. Now they wanted him to lead them back to the hotel. There was just one problem. They didn't bring an extra umbrella for him. All three offered to share theirs with him, but ended up arguing over who should get the chance. Back at the hotel, the sisters soaked in the bath together. Kazuki and Meiwa chatted about the festival, while Nico stayed quiet. She kept thinking about the walk back under the umbrella. She had won the right to share it with you in a game of rock, paper, scissors. But during that short walk, her heart beat too fast, and even now she couldn't explain why. Meiwa teased that it must be the kimono making her feel strange. Nico moved around awkwardly, and Kazuki and Meiwa burst into laughter, joking that she was finally becoming a proper woman. When the bath ended, they were surprised to see you at the lobby, soaking wet. He had forgotten to book a room and planned to look for another place to sleep, even if it meant a net cafe. The sisters were shocked. Kazuki quickly asked for an extra futon, and soon Yu was spreading bedding on the floor in their room. This ruined his original plan to give them time alone, but no one could let him sleep outside in the rain. They acted casual, but it was clear they cared. After all, they'd once lived together. Sharing a room now wasn't that strange. Yu said he would stay out of their way. He went to find a robe and bumped into Kazuki, who blushed but tried to hide it. Meiwa searched the cupboards for spare robes. When you helped her, they accidentally ended up face to face, making Meiwa flustered. Later, you helped Miko reach a robe from a high shelf, unintentionally cornering her against the cabinet. You left for his bath, apologizing for being in the way. The three sisters stood in silence, unsure how to relax with him nearby. That night, none of them could sleep. They pretended it was the excitement, but really, something felt different. Suddenly, Kazuki brought up Miko's flowery kimono, and a quiet chat turned into laughter and memories. They talked about their childhood, their old habits, and how much had changed, except Meiwa, who still got excited about picking kimonos. They remembered how close they once were, how life had pulled them apart even while living under the same roof. They realized Yu had brought them back together. Somehow, his silly plan had worked. Meiwa held up the photo Yu had lost. It had been with her all along. She compared it to the new one on her phone. The shrine looked the same, the smiles on their faces were real this time. The next day, Kazuki's perfect performance made headlines, and Meiwa and Nico won their competitions. Even after a sleepless night at the festival, they still shined. To him, they really were prodigies. Ever since the festival, you noticed the sisters had grown much closer. They supported each other more now, and the thought made him smile during class. He remembered the promise he made before they left to cook them a nice dinner when they got back. That afternoon, you came home with a bag full of groceries, ready to cook. But something felt off. The sisters' shoes were already by the door. They were home early. When you walked inside, he saw them standing in front of a man he didn't recognize. He got closer and realized it was Mr. Mikadono, their father. Surprised, you bowed and thanked him for letting him stay in their home. But Mr. Mikadono didn't smile. Instead, he reminded you that he must develop the talents his mother once had. You, unsure of himself, just laughed awkwardly. Then Mr. Mikadono asked his daughters about their progress. One by one, the sisters shared their recent successes. He listened and told them to keep improving. Then he stood up to leave. You quickly stepped forward and invited him to stay for dinner, but Mr. Mikadono refused. He said he only came to hear how his daughters were doing. As he turned to leave, he noticed a mask Kazuki had worn at the festival. Curious, he asked about it. You, not thinking, explained the whole story. The sisters going to the festival, revisiting childhood memories, and staying together. Mr. Mikadono went silent, then picked up the mask and put it on. His voice turned cold. He blamed you for distracting his daughters from their goals. You tried to explain about the lucky shrine they visited, but it only made things worse. Mr. Mikadono got angrier. He said he raised his daughters to be the best and things like festivals were a waste of time. Then he turned on you, calling him a failure. Even though you was the son of Subaru Ayase, a famous woman, he had no real accomplishments. Mr. Mikadono warned that someone without talent didn't belong in his house. Yu's eyes filled with tears, but Mr. Mikadono kept going, even grabbing Yu by the shoulder. That's when the sisters stepped between them. Each defended Yu in her own way, saying he made their lives easier and happier. But none of them admitted they truly needed him. They just said he helped. That night, Yu ate dinner alone. The sisters stayed in their rooms just like before. Mr. Mikadono had banned festivals and warned them to stay focused. Yu had cooked a meal for everyone, but they all said they were too busy to eat together. A week passed and things went back to how they were when you first arrived. The closeness was gone. During rehearsals, Nico stayed late instead of rushing home. She trained hard all day but only ate a small food packet at night. The food didn't taste good anymore. Kazuki practiced for her play and drank her smoothie, but it didn't make her happy. Maiwa played shogi while eating her favorite snacks, but they weren't satisfying. All three sisters started to realize the same thing. The meals they once enjoyed now felt empty. Yu, folding laundry, kept thinking about Mr. Mikadono's harsh words. He wondered if his dream of the simple, happy family was too small for people like them. But then he remembered his mom, who was also a prodigy. Even she had wanted peaceful family life. That thought gave Yu strength. He decided he would keep trying to build a happy home with the sisters. The next morning, the sisters left for school, but they noticed something strange. Yu didn't say goodbye. Later during lunch, Miko opened her usual salad, but found a homemade lunch instead. Her friends were amazed. The meal was made perfectly for her. She was so touched that she almost cried. Maiwa and Kazuki also found homemade lunches in their bags. When others tried to take some, Miko quickly protected her lunch. That small act reminded her how much Yu cared. That afternoon, while doing dishes, Yu saw all the lunch boxes were empty. He was still surprised when Kazuki came over with a bold idea. She told Yu that if he kept cooking for them, he could stay. With her auditions, Nico's tournament, and Miwa's match coming up, they needed him. Yu happily agreed. Even if they only saw him as a helper, he would still cook for them every day. The next day, Yu sent them off with fresh lunches and told them to have a good day. His kind words made all three girls feel flustered. Kazuki stood in the restroom at the studio, adjusting her wig. Two girls walked in, talking about the rehearsal, and noticed her. Kazuki smiled, but deep down she was nervous. Meanwhile, Nico got a call during practice. When she saw the caller, she answered excitedly. It was someone close to her, just back from overseas. He said he was looking forward to her tournament. Maiwa, practicing with her mentor, lost again. Her mentor asked her to choose between two future paths. Miwa didn't know what to do. That evening, the sisters came home feeling heavy. Kazuki had to act in her first female role. Miko had to impress someone important. Maiwa was facing a big life decision. On top of all that, they still carried the pressure from their father. They found Yu in the kitchen, stomping on dough. He was making healthy udon from scratch, but then he slipped and fell. The sisters laughed, and since they were early, decided to eat with him. Yu made different udon bowls for each of them. As they ate, Nico asked where he learned to cook. She said the flavor was just average. Kazuki and Miwa agreed it wasn't special, but it reminded them of something. Their father always said being average was bad. But this ordinary meal felt warm and comforting. Maybe even simple things could be good. After dinner, Yu washed dishes. Kazuki came over and offered to help. Yu was surprised. She said she was working on being more feminine. Yu wasn't sure that would help, but let her wash anyway. While they talked, Yu asked about her audition. Kazuki admitted she'd been anxious, but being home made her feel better. She noticed Yu's hands were full of cuts and burns. Even though people thought he was a good cook, he was still clumsy. Then Kazuki dropped a plate. It made a loud noise, but it didn't break. Yu told her he used strong plastic, so she could drop as many as she wanted. As he cleaned up, Yu slipped and hit the floor. His nose started bleeding. Kazuki rushed over but stepped on chopsticks and lost her balance. Her lips accidentally landed on Yu's. They kissed by mistake. Yu was stunned and quickly apologized, but Kazuki stayed calm. She said it was just an accident and reminded him to stop the bleeding before walking away. Yu stood there frozen. For Kazuki, it was probably nothing, but for Yu, it was his first kiss. The next day, it looked like rain. Kazuki checked the forecast on TV and saw a kissing scene, which made her freeze. Later, Meiwa ate a wobbly dessert and compared it to soft lips. Kazuki blushed and stormed off. Yu followed her into her room and brought up the kiss again. Kazuki acted like it didn't matter. Convinced, Yu apologized and left, but Kazuki was upset that it didn't mean anything to him. During rehearsal, Kazuki couldn't stop thinking about Yu. She struggled with her female role. Her mentor noticed and warned her not to let personal feelings get in the way. Kazuki knew he was right. When she got home, she asked Yu for a stamina meal and some help. Then she asked if he was free on Sunday. Thinking it was for errands, Yu said yes. But Kazuki leaned closer and told him with a serious face that she wanted to go on a date. Kazuki was never the type to act shy. That was why Yu was completely shocked when she suddenly asked him out on a date. Her voice was direct, almost demanding, as if this was an order rather than a request. What neither of them knew was that upstairs, her sisters Miko and Meiwa were eavesdropping from the second floor. They pressed themselves against the railing, unable to believe what they were hearing. Both of them were stunned that Kazuki, of all people, was asking you on a date. To them, it felt impossible. Before you could answer, the sisters ran off to their rooms, not wanting to get caught listening. Downstairs, you sat frozen, unsure of how to respond. He finally asked why Kazuki wanted this. Instead of giving a normal answer, Kazuki pulled out a flyer. It was for an audition that required her to play a feminine role. For years, she had only acted as princes and heroic male figures. The thought of acting like a heroine frightened her. She admitted that her mentor once told her that to act, one must experience things personally. To understand a heroine's feelings, she needed to go on a real date. At last, you understood. This wasn't about romance, it was training. Still, he could tell Kazuki was serious. Though she excelled at princely roles, this was a challenge she could not take lightly. So you agreed to help her. They would go out on Sunday. Kazuki leaned closer and warned him to keep it secret from her sisters. She also made it clear that he should not misunderstand her intentions. You nodded, already aware of that. But deep down, he wanted to make the date as fun and exciting as possible for her. Saturday came. He was cleaning the house when Miko casually asked him about his plans for Sunday. Trying to keep a secret, you answered that he had nothing important to do. But this only made Miko angry, convinced that he was lying. Maiwa, who had overheard the original conversation, became even more suspicious later when she heard you whispering to himself, promising to make the best date possible for Kazuki. Her cheeks turned red, and she became so flustered she couldn't even form words. That night, the four of them sat together for dinner, something they hadn't done in a while. But instead of being warm, the air was tense. The sisters shot suspicious looks at you and Kazuki. Sunday morning arrived. You waited at the meeting spot, dressed neatly, his heart beating faster than usual. Unbeknownst to him, Miko and Miwa had bought disguises from a shop nearby. At first, they wore silly costumes, teasing each other, but in the end they looked surprisingly good. Determined to find out the truth, they followed you secretly. Watching him wait for Kazuki, they admitted to each other that they could never imagine her going on a date with a boy. In their minds, Kazuki suited a girl better. Then Kazuki appeared. She wore a long black wig and a simple Sunday dress. For a moment, you and the hidden sisters were speechless. Kazuki looked completely different, almost unrecognizable. Despite wanting to smack you for staring, Kazuki tried to act gentle and charming like a heroine. You complimented her, but she quickly reminded him that she was only practicing. With a sweet voice, she asked him to begin their date. Their first stop was the aquarium. You tried his hardest to make everything perfect. Nico and Meiwa trailed behind, still in disbelief. When they walked down the stairs, Kazuki steadied you so he wouldn't stumble. It was supposed to be the other way around, but they laughed it off to stay in character. At the dolphin show, Kazuki clapped softly, forcing herself to act cute. But when water splashed the audience, she shielded you instead of letting him protect her. The crowd admired her, calling her cool. Kazuki's princely aura was hard to erase. From there, things went downhill. A shopping bag ripped open. A waiter messed up their order. Kazuki's feet grew sore from her sandals. She dragged herself along, tired and frustrated. Watching from afar, Miwa whispered that the date was sinking. Later, you went to the bathroom, leaving Kazuki alone. She looked at her reflection and sighed, thinking she was failing as a girl just as much as you failed at almost everything. Then a man approached her. He claimed to be a talent scout from a modeling agency and praised her figure. Kazuki, not daring to reveal her true identity, tried to avoid him. But he pressed harder, insisting she should model. Just as he tried to grab her hand, you appeared. He took Kazuki's wrist and pulled her close. The man assumed you was her little brother, but you corrected him firmly, saying that he was her date. When the scout demanded proof, you panicked. Words failed him until he blurted out that he was going to marry her. Both Kazuki and the man froze. Whispers spread through the nearby crowd. The scout laughed it off and left, but the damage was done. Kazuki turned bright red, humiliated by Yu's clumsy declaration. You urged her to forget it, then grabbed her hand and pulled her along naturally, without even realizing how close they looked. Hidden nearby, Nico and Miwa nearly screamed in shock. Hand in hand, you and Kazuki walked awkwardly. People mistook them for siblings, but you boldly intertwined his fingers with hers. Kazuki's heart jumped. Though embarrassed, she tightened her grip too. Their next stop was the cinema. You suggested a romantic film starring Kazuki's idol. She hesitated. This idol was famous for male roles just like her, and the movie had been her first attempt at a feminine character. Kazuki had never dared to watch it, fearing what she might feel. You, unaware of this, thought it would give her pointers, so they went inside. As the film played, Kazuki realized her idol hadn't shaken off her old habits. Though talented, the actress still carried herself like a man, even as a heroine. When the credits rolled, people whispered criticisms. Kazuki remembered her father's harsh words, saying that a prodigy must never fail. Her chest tightened. Instead of inspiring her, the movie crushed her confidence. You cursed himself for choosing it. From the shadows, Nico and Miwa also sighed, thinking the date was ruined. You refused to give up. Their final stop was the Ferris wheel. Nico and Miwa mocked the cliché at first, but when someone nearby mentioned it was known for creating new couples, they fell silent. As the ride began, you admired the view, but Kazuki only stared at him. Her thoughts drifted back to her childhood. Always dressed as a boy, always acting on stage, never allowed to simply be herself. At 6 years old, she debuted as a prince. Since then, every role carried heavy expectations. Now forced into femininity, she felt trapped again. Her thoughts broke when she noticed you trembling. He wasn't afraid of heights, but the glass floor terrified him. Kazuki asked why he chose this ride, and you admitted he only wanted their date to end perfectly. At the peak, you tried to encourage her, fumbling over his words. He told her she could be the best heroine. Though awkward, his determination touched her. He then pulled out his phone and showed her photos he had secretly taken, moments where she looked unguarded and natural. At first, Kazuki was embarrassed, but as he flipped through them, she barely recognized herself. She wasn't only a prince, she had many sides, each one real. You told her that while people often feared flaws, others could find beauty in them. Kazuki blushed and looked away, but his words stayed with her. When the ride ended, they stepped off smiling. The mother noticed Nico and Miwa quickly hiding nearby. Walking home, you asked about Kazuki's auditions. She admitted that for years she had been playing roles others expected. But now she wanted to act in her own way, even if she stumbled. You reassured her, reminding her to think back on this date if she ever messed up. Kazuki's face turned red. She suddenly ran ahead, not wanting him to see. From behind the bushes, Nico and Miwa whispered nervously, unsure what would happen next between them. Kazuki, however, had made her choice. She would give the audition her all. Before leaving for rehearsal, she leaned close to you. For a moment, he thought she would kiss him, but instead she softly admitted that the kiss they had shared before had been her first, and she could not forget it. Hit nearby, her sisters nearly fainted, unable to hear exactly what she said, but rattled by the intimacy. Kazuki then took off her wig, returning to her usual princely self. She waved goodbye. Later, you rushed to prepare dinner. Nico and Miwa acted as if nothing had happened, but secretly wanted to know everything. When they greeted him with a casual welcome home, Yu's face lit up with joy. He even asked them to repeat it, shocking them with how happy it made him. Though they pretended to be annoyed, deep down the sisters realized something. They too wanted you to cheer for them, just like he had done for Kazuki. And somewhere in her heart, Kazuki had already changed. She was no longer just the prince on stage. She was ready to step forward as herself, no matter what. That marks the end of today's Recap. If you enjoyed the video and want more of it, please support the channel by leaving a like and subscribe. Let's help us reach a current goal of 10K subscribers.